Now, later on this year, as a lot of you know, a new Star Wars series called The Acolyte will be coming to Disney Plus, with the latest rumors or reports saying it could even be coming as early as June. And as a lot of you also probably know, this is not a show that I am overly excited for, given some of the things we've heard said about it. Some of the things from the people involved with it, mainly Leslie Headland, the showrunner, who has said about this series, which will take place about 100 years before the prequels, that it isn't going to be kind to the Jedi Order. We also heard in the leaked trailer for it that this isn't about good or bad, this is about power and who is allowed to use it. And adding some, shall we say, fuel to the concerns I have about where this show might go, which I'll explain further in a bit. Recently, Amandla Stenberg, who is going to be playing the main character, or main characters, since there's rumors that she will be playing twins, one who will be taken in by the Jedi, and the other who will be found by the Sith, or will become a Sith assassin. Anyway, Stenberg recently said this about the Jedi and the time this show will be taking place in. In the context of the Star Wars universe, it's a time of great peace, theoretically. It's also a time of an institution, and it's a time in which conceptions around the Force are very strict. And I think what we're trying to explore within our show is when an institution has a singular conception of how power can be used, we try to provide a lot of different perspectives and answers to that question. The idea is to kind of honor the ethos of Star Wars and ideas around the Force, and also challenge them, hopefully harmoniously. And let me first quickly say that, obviously, we have not seen the show yet, so we cannot know exactly what she means or what it's going to be about or how it will exactly characterize the Jedi. And so I could be about to grossly misinterpret what she's saying here about it or about the Jedi. Or she could even be, well, maybe she's not wording it the best or whatever the case might be. Basically, I could be wrong here is what I'm trying to say. However, considering that, again, we've heard this show won't be kind to the Jedi, and that it will show why they were, I guess, wrong during the prequels, which is taken from another Leslie Headland quote, well, I'm very, very curious how they're going to show us or argue through the narrative of this show that, as Stenberg kind of describes here, that the Jedi's singular concept of how the Force can or should be used is wrong or bad somehow, keeping in mind they, the Jedi, believe it should only be used for knowledge and defense. And that we also know or have been led to believe that it is essentially the greatest power in the galaxy.
The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force.
Not that the Jedi see it as a power, mind you. And so the show even implying they would look at it as a power or think of it as such, or in such simple terms even, is already kind of on the wrong path. Anyway, I'm not sure how they're going to argue in this show that an institution that has strict rules on the usage of something that is, well, as significant and, yes, powerful as the Force can be, or potentially as dangerous as it can be, considering in the wrong hands one can take over the galaxy, well, I'm not sure how you argue it's a bad thing to have strict rules around its usage, especially when those rules amount to, and make it very clear, that the Force should never be used for selfish reasons, that it should always, quite literally always, be used in the service and or defense of others. It should always be used to help people and never exploited for personal gain. Not to mention, the Jedi are not exactly policing the usage of the Force outside of their own ranks or outside of their own order. They do not believe the Force belongs to them, or that they even have the right to deny others from using it when everyone is a part of it. And the Jedi trying to stop others from using it has never been shown anywhere outside of the Jedi confronting and actively seeking to stop the Sith, who are the very antithesis of the Jedi, and only use the Force for selfish reasons, and thus tend to cause great harm to many across the galaxy in the process. In essence, the Jedi stop them only to defend others because of the harm and imbalance they can cause, and not necessarily even because of them using the Force in the first place, or viewing it differently from them. Just look at something like the Night Sisters, for example, whom the Jedi are very much aware of. They know they're out there existing, doing their own thing, and they're aware and probably don't exactly like the way they use the Force. But the Night Sisters are completely left alone to practice their beliefs or religion around the Force as they see fit, even though they certainly, at the very least, lean more towards the dark side of the Force than the light. Though if the Night Sisters started to, say, cause harm to others in the galaxy, the Jedi would almost certainly take action against them. But not because they were using the Force wrong, but because they were harming others. Interestingly enough, it's also made quite clear in the stories of the High Republic era, of which this show will be a part of or take place at the tail end of, that the Jedi are very aware and okay with there being numerous factions across the galaxy that see and use the Force in all sorts of different ways. Even factions that completely disagree with the Jedi philosophy are respected by them. They're even very aware and partake in gatherings of these different sorts of Force religions that takes place at Jedha City, which, yes, is the city you may have seen or remember from Rogue One before it got blown up. Also, it should be pointed out that members of the Jedi Order are free to leave it at any time and face no sort of reprimand or repercussions for that decision. They can even, in theory, continue to use their Force powers without being, hunted down and killed for no longer following the Jedi way, but still using the Force. We even have examples right during the prequel era that the show is supposed to set up, of Jedi leaving with no issues whatsoever, such as when Dooku left, or even Ahsoka during the Clone Wars leaving. And so I'm not exactly sure where those responsible for making the Acolyte, where they're getting this idea that the Jedi are, to quote Stenberg again, they are an institution that has a singular conception of how power can be used, or that this should be a time in which conceptions around the Force are very strict. I'm honestly not sure how you watch the prequels and extrapolate that or believe that's what went wrong for the Jedi Order of the time. Because, if anything, it seems the Jedi weren't paying enough attention to how others were using the Force, and that's how the Sith rose to power right under their nose. I think the problem with the prequel Jedi was quite clearly overconfidence or being too sure of themselves, as literally said by Yoda.
A flaw more and more common among Jedi. Too sure of themselves they are. Even the older, more experienced ones.
I thought them having their council chambers atop what amounted to an ivory tower, you could argue, that it heavily implied they just thought they were better or had defeated the dark side, or that it could never truly threaten them from their lofty perch in the galaxy. Not that they were stopping anyone from using the Force a certain way or even cared, again, enough about how others were using it. And so what this all begins to sound like, or what I fear the Acolyte will be, is some edgy take on why the Sith, or the Sith way, isn't exactly wrong or all that bad. That it's all the Jedi's fault that the Sith exist in the first place because, they wouldn't share power or approve of the Force being used selfishly. That it's going to be some sort of justification for the existence of the Sith, which, if that's what they're trying to go with here, that's not Star Wars. It's the exact opposite of what George Lucas was trying to say with all this. Because one of the key messages we should take away from Star Wars is that when you make a mistake or do something wrong, even when it's an honest mistake or when others played a part in your decision as well, or you believed yourself to be right in the moment, you still have the choice after the fact of acknowledging your fault and seeking to redeem yourself for it. And that might be as simple as having to apologize to someone, or something as big as tossing the Emperor down a shaft. But basically, when you screw up, and especially when you screw up and hurt others in the process, we can either try to make it right, or we can try to justify our wrong and keep doing it. And it's so much easier to go down that dark path. That's what Yoda was trying to tell Luke in The Empire Strikes Back. Once you can justify your bad behavior, there's nothing to stop you from doing it over and over again. And I really, really fear they're going to try and turn the Sith sympathetic somehow, and they should not be. And yes, I get this is supposed to be a story told from the Sith perspective. And I think if done right, this could potentially be very, very interesting. And certainly the Sith don't think they are the bad guys, right? They don't think they're in the wrong. And they're no doubt going to blame the Jedi. We even have Darth Maul talking about getting revenge on them in The Phantom Menace.
At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge.
So yeah, clearly the Sith think the Jedi are at fault for something. Clearly they're not going to like them, and oftentimes those who do evil things, they really like to justify them to make themselves a hero in their own eyes. And I get all that and have no problem with the Sith seeing themselves as the good guys, or as some sort of necessary evil even, or the hero of their own story, shall we say. I'm fine with all that, and again, I think if done right, it could be quite good. But the way I keep hearing this show talked about, the quotes from those involved, it makes it sound like the Sith are going to be presented as victims of the Jedi, like they have an actual point, that they're just misunderstood, and the dark side isn't all that bad, actually, and that's a very slippery slope. Plus, the interesting thing to keep in mind then is, those who want to tear down goodness, they usually do so to make themselves feel better about the wrongs they've done. If good isn't actually good, then the evil I've done isn't actually evil.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil, but then you are lost!
Well, that's going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you make of these comments from Amanda Lustenberg. And what do you think of The Acolyte after hearing them? Are you excited for the show, or maybe sort of fearing it? Or maybe you just don't care either way. Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.